Okay, talking about the international game, Andy, let's move on to our next topic. US men's national team. What do you want to see in the Gold Cup this summer? Because it's an intriguing tournament. Gregg Berhalter has kind of maybe surprised a few people with his squad selection for this tournament. Very young US team, very inexperienced. Is the progress of the team overall and sort of squad players more important than winning this tournament? Do you think that's what we see from his squad selection this summer?
I think that's the entirety of what this tournament is about for the U.S. men's national team. B team really is what it is. It's a lot of young MLS players. It's a lot of young players from over in Europe who aren't into that first team group with the senior team yet. And so it's just an opportunity. So what I'm looking for out of this tournament is maybe 3 players that can get into the 23, or if it's going to be 25 or 26 man squad for the start of World Cup qualifying when it begins in September, just to supplement the bottom of that roster. Young players that maybe not for the 2022 World Cup are going to be important figures, but 4 more years down the road in 2026 when the tournament is in the US, Mexico, and Canada, that they have a little bit of experience, that they've been through the rigors and the journey of going to a major international tournament and the travel and the preparation and everything that's involved. And so names that I'm looking at here, Reggie Cannon obviously has got some experience with the senior team, but I would love to see him get a handful of games with this group and really cement himself as the right back. I love the idea of Sergiño Dest at left back as an inverted wing back, so he's kind of tucking inside into central midfield. I love that dynamic. I love the way that plays out on the field. I would love to find a center back out of this group that could play alongside or maybe even push John Brooks, but it's just not there at the moment. And so the entire player pool is just devoid of center backs at this point. Jean-Luc Cabuzio from here in Kansas City, I think is probably the name that everybody's most excited to see because of the way that he started 2021 for Sporting Kansas City. He's been on absolute fire. He has transitioned kind of from a number 10 to a number 6. He's looking real good. I think he's going to go to Europe, probably somewhere in Italy this summer. And so he's going to take that next step in his career and the development there. So that's a very, very positive sign. And then up top, I think there's 2 names really that stick out. Daryl Dike and Nicholas Gioacchini that, we saw what DK did when he went on loan to Barnsley and the success that he had there. And he needs to have a semi-strong showing to. He's going to get a move, I think, this summer, but to secure a slightly better move than where he might go. And Gioacchini is just an unknown quantity at this point. We need to see, is he a center forward? Is he a player that's a little bit more out wide? I think Gregg Berhalter sees him as more of a winger, whether it's on the right or the left. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets used. But there's a ton of talent within this group. It's just so inexperienced. So I'm curious to see how, as the tournament goes on, Berhalter kind of mixes and matches some of those players, kind of maximizes playing time for some of those young individuals that have the highest ceilings and the best chance at making that squad come September.
You talked about some of the young and experienced players there. You mentioned a few of them already, but I'm looking at someone like Miles Robinson, obviously Sam Vines, talked about Busio. In their positions where they play, there's some opportunities there, isn't there? Because Sergiño Dest can play. Obviously, right back is his usual position. So left back is kind of up in the air. Anthony Robinson and a few others are in there. But you'd say there's maybe a spot for at least a backup position there. And centre back, that's a big one. If Robinson or Zimmerman can really elevate themselves to be not just in the conversation, but a starter alongside Brooks. Because as you said, no one's taken that position yet. So there's a lot to play for, even though it's a young, inexperienced squad.
Yeah, Zimmerman, I think by default remains in that conversation because there just simply is the number of center backs that are available of that quality is just not where it needs to be, which is, it's a bit backwards of what we're used to with the U.S. men's national team. We're used to having a superstar goalkeeper, a couple of really solid, if not spectacular center backs, and that's the foundation to build around. I don't know about either of those spots right now. Zach Steffen, with the injury that he picked up against Mexico in the Nations League final, we'll see how long it takes him to get back from that. Can he be back to his very best for the start of World Cup qualifying because we need him to be? Miles Robinson would be, if he could take a massive leap up, then that would be fantastic. It would be fantastic if anybody could take a massive leap up at center back. I just, I'm looking at the roster here. I don't see it from any individual in that position. So Zimmerman remains in that conversation for the, kind of the A team, if you will. but he's had a lot of opportunities. We've seen that. We kind of know what that looks like when he's in that team. So I don't know. Maybe it's a case of they kind of have to change the system a little bit once they get back into the senior team, where I know it sounds counterintuitive. You don't have two good center backs, so you play three. But it makes it a little bit easier. You cut the space down just a little bit that everybody's responsible for. You've got the two really, really good fullbacks that you can build around. You've got a midfield full of versatile players that can do a number of different jobs. You can set that team up a lot of different ways. You can have a little bit more possession that way as well. So maybe that's an option, but it would be nice if someone out of this group could step into that conversation.
Absolutely. And is this all about preparation for the World Cup qualifiers? Because I'm looking at Sebastian Lejet, Paul Ariola, Zardes. There's a few players there who will probably have quite a big say. Maybe not the starters, but squad players off the bench for these World Cup qualifiers. So is it about maybe giving them, an added role, I suppose, in the Gold Cup to boost them ahead of World Cup qualifiers and making sure that is the focus? That all these stars, Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, when they come back in, they have even better help and more help from some of these very, very good MLS players, but clearly they kind of know their role within the U.S. men's national team, right?
Well, two of the players that you just mentioned there, Pulisic and Adams, are semi-regularly or frequently injured and unavailable for the national team. And so having a backup in a contingency plan for, the stars that the team is built around is not a bad thing either. I like that you mentioned Sebastian Lejet there, because I feel like he's stuck somewhere in between being a regular first teamer and just not quite up to the standard that you need if the U.S. is going to go to that next level. He's obviously got a ton of caps and he's played a lot with the first team, but he always seems to end up in these kind of B/MLS squads whenever one of them gets put together. So it is an opportunity for him. It was unfortunate to see Paul Ariola pick up an injury in the first game on Sunday night. Hopefully that's nothing serious. He's obviously not long back from a torn ACL. And so what he brings, I think, in those wide areas as kind of a true, almost traditional winger, if you will, is something that we don't have in the player pool. And so as a specific role, when you're thinking about putting together a 23-man roster for a major tournament, that would be nice to have. So, if he can come back during this tournament and show well and kind of solidify a place for that, I think there's a spot for him. So, there are places to be won and ground to be gained for a number of players in this group.
As for the Gold Cup overall, Andy, are there any teams that you really look at and say they've got a good chance of having a run here? Because I'm looking at Mexico, their squad's pretty stacked as always, and you kind of see their strength and depth, right? In terms of, they've got the Olympics going on. Some of the European-based players aren't involved, but they still have a lot of incredible players in this squad. And so do Canada as well. When you look through some of the names on their roster and you look around Costa Rica, Jamaica, some of these squads are actually really, they've gone for it for the Gold Cup. They obviously prioritized this to kind of build themselves up for World Cup qualifying, where the US haven't done that. So for me, it looks like Mexico and maybe someone like Jamaica are actually, gonna push really, really hard to win it this summer, and maybe just put that in the back of the US men's national team mind, like, okay, we're here, we're waiting for you for World Cup qualifying, and we want to build some winning momentum, because we all saw how much the US men's national team enjoyed winning the Nations League against Mexico, but World Cup qualifying is the big one. So Gold Cup seems like a big, big opportunity for some of these nations that may not have won it otherwise.
Yeah, it's Mexico's tournament to lose. And if they try to change that narrative in any way because they struggled against Trinidad and Tobago in the first game and drew 0-0, or they're working on some things for ignore it. Okay. This is Mexico's tournament to win. If they do not win this Gold Cup, it's a massive failure by them. And that's not the U.S. men's national team fan in me speaking. That is just the truth. If you look up and down the squad, obviously, the absolutely terrifying injury that happened to Irving Lozano there in that opening game. We obviously hope that he's okay and that he's going to recover quickly and that he can get back into action here in the next few months or so. That's what unfortunate just what an unfortunate scene given what happened with Raul Jimenez within the last handful of months for Mexico as well. So, obviously hope he's back, but the rest of the squad that they've got there, Jamaica, a nice little dark horse. I was thrilled and excited to see what Canada could do with kind of a culmination of a handful of years of some players getting moves to Europe and just young, talented players. And then Alphonso Davies had to pull out of the tournament, and suddenly, well, okay, it's just kind of the normal Canada team that we're used to seeing. So I still remain hopeful, though, that Canada, as they progress on, can become kind of one of that third, if you will, kind of power within the region to join the U.S. and Mexico, because we do need that. We need more competition within the Confederation so that once we get to major international tournaments, we're better prepared for it.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great Gold Cup this summer. Of course, we'll keep you updated with all the latest news on the US men's national team. A young, inexperienced squad, but it should be a lot of fun to watch them develop this summer and try and win the Gold Cup. But there's no doubt Mexico are the overwhelming favourites. Watch out for Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and, of course, likes of Panama as well. I feel like there's a lot of teams there who can cause a surprise this summer.
There's always one at every Gold Cup, isn't there?
There always is. And a Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com will have you covered with all the latest Gold Cup news this summer.